Hey, what's up guys? This is DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Pendulum Magician deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck just got back all 3 copies of Double Iris Magician and 2 copies of Joker, which helps out this deck's consistency a lot. This deck is absolutely busted and I love the way it plays. It has so much consistency now that we have Double Iris back at 3, Joker back at 2, and this deck is just crazy. This deck is one of the best decks in the entire format, and Pendulum best deck. Let's go. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month your patron along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Double Iris Magician. This card is absolutely busted at 3. I love that they gave us back all 3 of this card because it helps out the consistency of this deck so much. It has the ability that once per turn you can target a dark spellcaster type monster you control, apply the effect to it, then destroy this card. Once applied, double any battle damage that monster inflicts to your opponent this turn if it battles an opponent's monster. And if this card is destroyed by battle or by card effect, you get to add a Pendulum Graph card from your deck to your hand, which helps out the consistency of this deck so much to be able to get out your copies of your Pentagraph cards from the deck. We then play 2 copies of Purple Poison Magician. Purple Poison helps out the deck a lot as well because it lets you once per turn, if a dark spellcaster type monster battles before damage calculation, you can activate the effect that monster gains 1200 attack and you destroy this card. And if this card is destroyed by battle by card effect, then you get to target one face-up card on the field and destroy it, which helps out the deck a lot to be able to pop cards on the field. Play just a single copy of Black Fang. Black Fang lets you once per turn target a face-up monster your opponent controls, and its attack becomes half its current attack, and you destroy this card. And if this card is destroyed by battle or by card effect, then you can target a dark spellcast type monster in your graveyard and special summon it back, which is a really good effect. We play 3 copies of Harmonizing Magician. Harmonizing Magician is if this card is Pendulum summoned, then you get to activate the effect to be able to special summon a Pendulum Magician from your deck and defense position except another copy of itself, which is a really awesome effect just to be able to get you an additional monster on the field and just go in for all sorts of really good plays. We then play 3 copies of Wisdom Eye Magician. Wisdom Eye Magician is if you have a Magician or Perform Power card in your other Pendulum zone, you can destroy this card, and if you do, you place any Magician Pendulum monster from your deck in your Pendulum zone except another copy of itself, which helps out again with the consistency of the deck just to throw any of your Pendulum Magicians that you need to fix your scales into your Pendulum zone. And if this card is discarded, or you can discard this card to target one card in your Pendulum zone whose current Pendulum scale is different from its original Pendulum scale, and it becomes its original Pendulum scale, which helps out the deck a little bit to be able to kind of make sure that your Pendulum scales are what they should be. We then play 3 copies of Oath Dragon Magician, which is my favorite in the entire deck for what it does. If you have a Magician card in your other Pendulum zone, you can add a face-up Magician Odd Eyes monster, or face-up Magician or an Odd Eyes Pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand, which helps out the deck a lot because then you don't have to summon to link zones, and it just helps out so much to be able to summon out from the hand instead of from the extra deck. And if this card is normal or special summon, you get to target a Magician Pendulum monster or Odd Eyes monster in your graveyard and add that card back to your hand. We then play 3 copies of Perform a Pal Celestial Magician. This card is crazy good in this deck. I've bumped it up to 3 from the last build because it has a bunch of crazy good effects. That when exactly one face-up fusion, Synchro, or XZ card you control that was special summoned from the extra deck is destroyed by battle or by opponent's card effect, you can special summon that destroyed monster, then destroy this card, and you can only select this card once per turn. Its monster effect is that during your main phase, if this card is normally special summoned this turn, you can apply the following effect for the rest of the turn based on the other monsters you currently control. If you control a fusion, this card can attack directly. If you control a Synchro, your opponent cannot activate monster effects. In XZ, this card's attack becomes double its original attack, and a Pendulum monster during the end phase, you can add 1 Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand. This card is an absolutely crazy card. It does it all, and you've got to play this card at 3 in this deck. We then play 3 copies of Perform Pal Pendulum Sorcerer. Pendulum Sorcerer is really good because if a Perform Pal monster is Pendulum summoned to your field, all of them gain 1000 attack until the end phase of the turn, which is a really good effect. But if this card is special summoned, you get to target 2 cards that you control, destroy them. If you do, add Perform Pal monsters with different names from your deck to your hand, except Perform Pal Pendulum Sorcerer, equal to the number of cards destroyed by this effect, which we play two different ones. We play our copies of our Perform Pal Celestial Magician, and we play Perform Pal Skull Crabat Joker, which is finally back at 2. I think on the next list it's going to go to 3, but when this card is normal summon, you get to add from your deck to your hand a Perform Pal monster, Pendulum Magician monster, or a Odd Eyes monster from your deck to your hand, which is really, really good. This card is essentially the elemental hero Stratos of the deck, that when it's summoned to your field, you get to add literally just about any monster from your deck to your hand, which is insanely good for this deck. This deck card is pretty much the only normal summon you're ever going to summon in this deck. We then play a single copy of Dragon Pit Magician. Dragon Pit Magician has the ability that once per turn, if you have another Magician card in your other Pendulum zone, you can discard a Pendulum monster, then target one spell or trap card on the field and destroy it, which is really helpful for this deck to be able to pop those additional cards. We then play 3 copies of Curtain Raiser for our last Pendulum monster for the deck. I play this card because it helps me get an additional monster on my side of the field. It has a once per duel effect that if you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your Pendulum zone, and you can only effect this card once per duel. It's a really good card to be able to just instantly give you another monster on the field to go into rank 4s, go into all sorts of different plays with link monsters. It's just an overall really good card for this deck as a 3 of. So that's it for the Pendulum monsters. Let's get into the other monsters that we're playing in the deck. So for the other monsters, we're playing 3 copies of Tuning Magician. Tuning Magician is really good in this deck because it's our needle fiber target that we're going to be special summoning out all the time in this deck, because it has the ability that if you have 2 Magician cards in your Pendulum zone, while this card's in your hand or graveyard, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. You only select this card once per turn, and if this card is normal or special summon, your opponent gains 400 life points and you take 400 points of damage, which is not that big of a deal, because basically what you're going to do with this card is special summon out a copy of Curtain Raiser normally, and then be able to normal summon this card to your side of the field. Or if you have the Pendulum monsters in your extra monster zones or in your Pendulum zones, you're going to basically just instantly special summon this card from your hand, which is really, really good to then go needle fiber and then climb into some other plays. So this card is really, really good as a 3 of in the deck. We then play a single copy of Artifact Scythe because we can totally shut down our opponent's extra deck by using this card with Dagda to be able to completely lock them out of the extra deck for the rest of the turn, which is really good. And then I play Dragoons in this deck because Dragoons is just too good not to play in this deck, and it's a really good card because you just play 1 Dark Magician and 1 copy of Red Eyes Black Dragon. These cards are really good in this deck because you can actually Pendulum summon them out to your side of the field really easily if you do draw into them, and they're really good to be able to discard with cards like your Pendulum Call if you do have them in the hand. So they're still really good cards to be able to summon to your side of the field. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Red Eyes Fusion because we're going to be using this to go into our copy of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon using our Red Eyes Black Dragon and our Dark Magician. 1 copy of Star Pentagraph. Star Pentagraph is really good in this deck because if your opponent cannot target spellcaster monsters you control with spell effects or effects of the spell cards, and if a face-up Magician Pendulum monster you control leaves the field or a Pendulum zone, then you can add a Magician Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand. A Star Pentagraph is so good in this deck. It's just such a good card to give you additional searches and additional plays. We then play 2 copies of Pendulum Call. I just play 2 copies of Pendulum Call because it kind of conflicts with my copies of my Wisdom Eye Magician, which is why I just play it as a 2 of. It lets you discard a card to add any 2 Magician Pendulum monsters with different names from your deck to your hand. And also until the end phase of the next turn after this card resolves, Magician cards in your Pendulum zone cannot be destroyed by card effects, and you only effect this card once per turn. You cannot activate this card if you activate a Magician Pendulum monster's effect this turn, which basically locks you out of either using this or your copy of Wisdom Eye Magician. We then play 3 copies of Duelist Alliance. Duelist Alliance is such a good card in this deck because it has the ability to, if there is a card in your Pendulum zone, you can add a Perform Pal, or you can add a Pendulum monster, or a Pendulum spell or trap from your deck to your hand, which is again why I just play the 2 copies of Pendulum Call, because I can use Duelist Alliance to search it, which is what's really good. So that's it for the spells, guys, let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just going to be playing 2 copies of Time Pentagraph. Time Pentagraph is really good. It's searchable in this deck. It has the ability that your opponent cannot target spellcaster monsters you control with trap effects or the effects of any trap card. You can only use the following effect of this card once per turn. You can target a Magician Pendulum monster card in your monster zone or in your Pendulum zone and 1 card your opponent controls and destroy them. Then if this card did not destroy 2 cards, you can send a card on the field to the graveyard, which is really good because it doesn't even target if it doesn't send them to the graveyard. So this card is so good as a 2-of in this deck. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of Time Star Magician. Time Star Magician helps out the deck a lot to grab the exact card you need when you need it, because this card searches basically any of your dark spellcast type monsters, because it has the ability, it must be XZ summoned with the above materials, which is 2 Magician Pendulum monsters, which we play plenty of in this deck, and has the ability to detach an XZ material from this card to add from your deck to your hand a dark spellcaster type monster from your deck, graveyard, or face-up from your extra deck, and then once per turn, if a Pendulum monster cards in your main monster zone or Pendulum zone would be destroyed by battle by card effect, you can send a spellcaster monster from your deck to the graveyard instead, which helps out the deck a lot to get additional cards in the graveyard. We then play a single copy of Tornado Dragon just to give us something to pop spells and traps, and it's going to be our go-to XZ monster for our finishing play to pop spells and traps on the field. You can also use this card to pop our copy of Scythe if we do hard draw in the Scythe. So this card is a really good card because it lets you once per turn during either player's turn detach material from this card, target a spell trap on the field, and instantly pop it. We then play a single copy of Access Code to give us additional pops on the field, which is really good, and it's a great link for Appaloosa. You're usually going to end on the Appaloosa to give you additional negations. Usually you're going to end with 4 negations on the Appaloosa. Sometimes it'll be 3, it just kind of depends, but 3 to 4 is usually where you always end. We play double Selene, Queen of the Master Magician. This card is a card that you will be summoning all the time in this deck. What this card does is if this card is link summoned, you place counters on this card equal to the number of spell cards on the field and in the graveyards, which your Pendulum scales count as spells while on the field, which is really good. It also has the ability that when an Endymion card you control on the field, your opponent's card effect, the really important effect of this card that you're going to be using is once per turn during the main phase, quick effect, remove 3 spell counters from this card to special summon 1 spellcaster monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position to whose zone this card points to. That's the really good effect, not the Endymion effect. That's why I totally skipped over it. The effect of the special summoning the spellcast type monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position to whose zone it points to is going to be the big effect that you're going to be using all the time. When they're playing same copy of Crystron Needle Fiber. Needle Fiber is just really good to be able to get out your copy of your Tuning Magician on your side of the field to then climb into other plays. So this card is very, very pivotal for our combos. I just play 1 copy of it. You can play 2. I like 1 in my build because I never go into it a second time. Usually if I go into it a second time, I've already kind of in a bad situation. So this card is just a good 1-of to me. Play a single copy of Dagda because it gets our artifact from the deck to our side of the field. So this card is really, really good in the deck. 1 copy of Verte Anaconda because you can use it with Red Eyes Fusion. It's going to be the main card that you're going to be using with Red Eyes Fusion in case you hard draw the Red Eyes Fusion. You can still use it, but this card comes in really, really handy to go into your Dragoons. 1 copy of Borreload Savage. Borreload Savage is really good in the deck because Borreload Savage is just going to give you those additional negates by using any of your link monsters as material to go use as an equip card on this card. It gives it tokens or it gives it counters on it depending on the rating of the link monster, which is really good. We play a single copy of the Ignister monster. This card is really good in the deck because it just requires a tuner and a non-tuner Pendulum monster to go into this card, so it's very, very easy to summon in this deck to go into this card because you just have to use a level 4 tuner monster plus any of your Pendulum monsters. It bounces stuff on the field, and once per turn you can target a Pendulum monster on the field or 1 card in your Pendulum zone, destroy it, and if you shuffle 1 card on the field into the deck. So this card doesn't target. It's really good as a 1-of in this deck, and it just gets rid of all sorts of problematic cards. 1 copy of F.A. Dawn Dragster because you can pop spells or traps and negate them, which is really good, or negate spells and traps with this card's effect, which is really, really helpful for this card, for this deck. 1 copy of TG Wonder Magician. A lot of people asked last time how you go into this card. in the comments, you're actually going to use your Crystron Needle Fiber to go into this card every single time, because during your opponent's turn, you can banish it and then be able to go into this card to be able to special summon it to your side of the field, which gives you a level 5 monster to pop something on the field, and it's a tuner monster, which helps out a lot. One copy of Quandrax. Quandrax is another card that you can go into with your Needle Fiber, because you can use the Needle Fiber to summon, or you can summon this card off the copy of the Needle Fiber's effect. Both of these cards can be summoned off of this card's effect, which is really awesome, because you can then go into synchro plays during your opponent's turn, because this lets you go into synchro plays during your opponent's turn to interrupt them with a copy of the Ignister, which is really, really, really good in this deck. And then the same copy of Dragoons, because Dragoons is a tank and it's really easy to summon in this deck, because it basically, at the end of your combo, if you have any 2 monsters left on the field, you make Anaconda and then you link it away, or you use its effect to be able to send your copies of your Red Eyes Black Dragon, your Red Eyes Fusion, and your Dark Magician to the graveyard, and summon this at the very end of your combo to give you an absolutely insane boss monster. So that's it for this one, guys. That's it for the best deck ever. This deck is absolutely insane. I love Pendulum Magicians. This deck is probably going to be a very interesting deck going forward, especially if they give us the 3rd Joker back. I still think this deck is one of the best decks to be able to play around with. It's insanely consistent. It's really fun to be able to play around with, and giving us back 3 double Iris Magician is just so good. Like, I really think they will give us in the next list, they probably will give us Joker back, which is just going to help out the deck a lot. So anyways, guys, this is Dark Arm Duels. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.